The thing with renovations is that sometimes when you start, you think this is going to be a pretty straightforward job, but it very often turns out to be something much more involved, and it sometimes becomes a big challenge. So when you're pulling a wall apart or a floor up or into a ceiling, you don't know what you're going to find. So yeah, renovations can spring some real big surprises on you, and it becomes a real challenge. You've just got to start somewhere and work your way through it. So what we thought we needed to do was tackle the renovation in 3 stages. The first stage involved us needing to separate this area off from the main house. The reason that was important was because when we were working on this renovation in here, we'd open up some of the walls, which meant there would be access from animals and the wildlife outside and vermin, and we didn't want them getting into the main house. The second stage involved us building in a brand new kitchen. The third stage involved building in a completely new bathroom. So some of the challenges we were faced when closing this off from the main dwelling involved a doorway in this wall. So that had to be closed off, both sides. We had a doorway over in this wall that also required closing off. And the other thing that we came across as well was the fact that this wall was lined with VJ board diagonally. And we recognised that it was likely that this was the case because it was acting as bracing for the home. So what we did was we left the VJ board lined on the wall, and we plasterboarded or drywalled over the top. Some of the challenges that I came across, which were a real concern for me, was working with mud brick. I had never worked with mud brick walls before. And this wall over here, now it's got a slim window and a door in it, but it used to have a bigger window. And I wanted to fit a doorway in there so that guests could gain access to the back garden and to the clothesline. But I'd never really worked, as I said, I'd never worked with mud brick before. And so I was not sure, how was the mud brick wall going to stand up to me cutting into it? Was it going to crumble? How would I be able to finish it off? Was I going to be able to finish off the edge of the mud brick wall so it was nice and neat and well presented? How was I going to be able to fasten the timber door frame to the mud brick wall? How was I going to be able to fasten the window into the mud brick wall? So a lot of challenges there that I had to take one step at a time. So the skirting board, why was it a challenge? Well, fitting the skirting board to an uneven mud brick surface, major challenge. I'll share with you how I went about fastening it to the wall and finishing it off like it is. Stage 2 involved building in a brand new kitchen. Big job. I'd never built a kitchen before, and that was all new ground for me. For example, between these 2 posts here was a mud brick wall. Now that had to be pulled out. Between these 2 posts was a mud brick wall, also had to be pulled out. Big job, never done that before. Learn as I went along. In behind the fridge here, there's a wall that had to be built in because the wall used to be here. And so this was the laundry space. So yeah, big challenges. So where I'm standing was actually an external space. We used to use this area to store the dog food and other bits and pieces. Now the roof and the ceiling were already here because that formed the eaves of the house. So what it required from me is to build in the walls around here to make it an enclosed kitchen area. Well, were there challenges? Absolutely. There were many. One that comes to mind was the fact that this cabinetry of a flat pack kitchen that I'd never worked with before, I not only had to learn to put the flat-packed kitchen together, but I had to learn how to fit it into these acute angled walls. That was a real challenge. But let me tell you, the very biggest challenge of the lot was this composite stone kitchen benchtop. Now, I wanted to put this kitchen benchtop in one piece without any joins in it. Now, the cabinetry was fitted first, and this was to go in afterwards. It was very tight fitting, and as you can see, it wraps around the cabinetry at both sides. If you want to know how I accomplished this crazy feat of installing this composite stone benchtop in such a tight space, watch part 3. And one other thing to be aware of, make sure you and your partner are on the same page with what your ideas are. For example, I'd started tiling the floor, and I'd started laying these tiles here on a 90-degree angle to the border tile. Fortunately, Lisa come in before I'd laid more than a dozen tiles and brought to my attention that we really should be having them on a 45 degree. So that was great because they look so much more impressive on a 45. So that was stage 2. Let me tell you about stage 3. By far the last and most challenging of all was the remodeling of the laundry and the bathroom. This wall didn't exist, had to be built, and the mud brick wall contained all of the plumbing. Now, the plumbing had to be rerouted for the kitchen, it had to be rerouted for the shower, the vanity, and the toilet. So major plumbing works needed to be done. When you have a look at this wall here, the door into the bathroom was right here. The wall of the bathroom was from this post across to that post, which meant that there was no room for a vanity. So originally there was a linen cupboard here, and then the shower here, and the toilet was pretty close to where it is now, and so there was no room, no space at all for a vanity cupboard. We had to wash our hands in the toilet. I mean, it was rough those days. Only joking, we actually had to wash our hands in the laundry tub. It wasn't that bad. Some of the challenges that I faced, actually just let me take my hat off before I get started. Yes, some of the challenges that I faced were that I realised that the original toilet was coming out of the wall at an unusual angle. It was not 90 degrees, which meant all the plumbing had to be changed to suit the new toilet. That brings me to this wall here. That was the original wall was a mud brick wall, different textures, different in and out, which meant it was not really hygienic for being a wall behind a toilet. So that needed to be rendered. That was quite a challenge because it required very thick render. Which brings me to this area here. Now there used to be a mud brick wall here, and this used to be outside. So I'm standing in what used to be the outdoors area of the house. But fortunately we had big eaves, and so I was able to build in this area to accommodate the shower.
Just stand under the rose there, honey, for a minute.
Yeah, okay.
I'll just demonstrate how the tap works.
One big surprise was discovering that each course in the mud brick walls had barbed wire running through them. I understand why they did this. It was to just strengthen the integrity of the wall, but I must admit it was a real surprise to discover it. At times, I felt like I'd been sentenced to 10 years hard labour when working in here. One of the other challenges that I came across was, well, the removal of the tiles on the floor. Now, being a tiler myself, I thought they're hard glazed mosaics. They're going to be a bit difficult to get off, but they were incredibly difficult to get off. They were insanely bonded to the concrete slab, and it was full-on job prizing them loose. So that was massive. It was a perfect example of how challenges can just spring upon you, what you're not ready for. And that's so often the case with renovations. One other challenge that I came across was that we needed to have an exhaust fan in the ceiling, because without that, there's a real problem with condensation in the bathroom. And of course, where was I going to run the ducting for the exhaust fan? That was a major challenge with a post and beam house. Oh, and while we're at it, let me show you this little feature that we've got. This mirror here, you see this icon here, touch that, and that Bluetooths your electronic device to the mirror speaker, and you can play your music in the bathroom and dance while you're having a shower. This is the light, and that's a demister. So a fancy mirror for a fancy bathroom.
Fanciest mirror we've ever owned.
So now this reno is completed, what have I learnt from this project? Well, one big one that stands out is the fact that a renovation is very different to a new build. With a new build, you're starting from scratch. You know your parameters. But with a renovation, you're not sure what's going to turn up. For example, when you pull a wall apart, you might find that it is structurally unsound. And so you now have to pay attention to that first before continuing with your renovation. So with a renovation, you need to go into it expecting the unexpected. Then with that mindset, when surprises come along the way, you're in a better frame of mind to deal with it and just take it step by step. Another thing that I've learned in this process is the importance of having a clean strip out. It enabled me to have a clear mindset, and it enabled me also to be able to just go at the job and push forward without any hold-ups, any obstacles. I was able to move forward cleanly and get the job done. A third point that I really picked up was when I was confronted with major challenges, real big surprises. Instead of becoming overwhelmed, I thought, how am I going to get through this? I could think of all of the things that I had to do and I'd be overwhelmed. Rather, I realized I needed to just break this down into step-by-step process. If I was faced with an unexpected challenge, that became my next step. And so really the lesson that I learned from this project is just take the reno step by step, and you'll get there.